On the distant planet of Virea, the people lived in peace, a species known for their connection to the earth and their love for balance. The Vireans were tall, with greenish skin that shimmered in the sunlight, and their long, flowing limbs blended with the environment. They lived in harmony with nature, and their cities were built in the heart of vast forests and tall mountains. The Vireans had no need for war. They solved all their problems through patience and communication. They believed in the power of the land and their connection to it. And for centuries everything had been perfect. At the center of Virea stood a tall temple surrounded by fields of glowing flowers. Inside there was an ancient oracle named Sela, revered by all the Vireans. Sela was a quiet woman, with silver hair that reached the ground and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. She was known for her deep visions and the ability to read the threads of time. The oracle's word was sacred to all, and the people trusted her guidance. One evening, as Sela sat in her temple, her meditation was interrupted by a vision. Her eyes widened as she saw a figure standing against the sky, a being unlike any the Vireans had ever seen. It was human. The vision showed a great fire, a city crumbling to the ground, and the sky darkened with smoke. And in the middle of all this destruction, the human stood, his face marked with a look of both pain and determination. Sela gasped as the vision ended. Her heart raced, and for the first time in many years, doubt crept into her mind. She stood up quickly and rushed to the council chamber. The ancient council, made up of the oldest and wisest Vireans, gathered in a large hall made of stone and wood. They looked at Sela with respect, waiting for her news. Sela, one of them, an elder named Taro, spoke first. "What has troubled you?" Sela stood before them, her expression grave. "I have seen a vision," she began, her voice steady, though inside she felt fear. "A human will come to our world, a human, and with him, destruction." The room fell silent. The Vireans had heard of humans, but only in stories. They were said to be powerful, unpredictable, and violent. A species capable of great harm, but also capable of great creativity and innovation. Some believed humans were extinct. Others thought them a myth. "Are you sure of this, Oracle?" Taro asked, his voice low. "A human? On our world?" Sela nodded slowly. "Yes, a human, and he will bring destruction. I saw it clearly. The fire, the collapsing city. It will be our end if we do not act." The council exchanged worried glances. The Vireans had always feared the unknown. This prophecy was not something they had ever expected. But Sela had never been wrong before. Her visions were always true. "What should we do, Oracle?" asked Ryla, another council member. She was younger, with bright green eyes that reflected the colors of the surrounding forests. "Should we prepare for war?" Sela shook her head. "No, war is not the answer. We must understand why this human has come here. If we can, perhaps we can prevent the prophecy from coming true." The council was still uneasy. "We cannot trust this human," Taro said. "If the prophecy says destruction, then we must prepare for it. We must remove him before it's too late." Sela hesitated. She felt a deep conflict within herself. The vision had shown destruction, but it had also shown the human's face. A face filled with sorrow, not evil. Was it possible that the prophecy had been misunderstood? Could the human be part of something larger, something beyond their understanding? "I will speak with the human," Sela said firmly. "I will see for myself." The council disagreed. But Sela's decision was final. The oracle had spoken, and her word was sacred. As she turned to leave the council chamber, the others fell silent, their minds filled with worry and doubt. Sela walked slowly back to her temple, the weight of her vision pressing down on her shoulders. She had seen the future, but she wasn't Sure, it was the future they were meant to follow. What if the human could help them? What if they had misunderstood everything? The Oracle had always trusted the flow of time, but now, for the first time in her long life, she wasn't sure where it was taking her. The Virayans had never expected to see a human on their planet. But that all changed on a quiet morning when a strange sound filled the air. It was like thunder, but it didn't come from the sky. Instead, it rumbled beneath the ground, shaking the earth. For a moment, the trees swayed as if caught in a sudden storm. The ground cracked open, and the people in the nearby village watched in shock. From the edge of the jungle, a strange object appeared. It was small and shaped like a metal badu. The Virayans had never seen anything like it before. It looked like something from the stars, though they had heard stories of such ships. The pod crashed to the earth with a loud thud, sending dust into the air. The villagers were scared. They had heard the oracle's prophecy. They had heard the stories of humans and their violent ways. Some of them feared the worst. They began to run, unsure of what to do. The elders sent a group of guards to investigate, their steps heavy on the earth as they approached the crash site. The first guard to reach the pod was Taro, one of the elders who had been present when the oracle spoke of the prophecy. He was strong and calm, with a sense of duty that kept him grounded in moments of fear. As he drew near the pod, he could see that it was damaged but still intact. He could hear something, or someone, inside. "Be careful," he called. To the others, his voice steady but filled with caution. It could be dangerous. He knelt by the pod and slowly pressed a button on its side. The door hissed open, revealing a human. It was a man, lying unconscious and battered by the crash. He was covered in dirt, his clothes torn and his face pale. His breathing was slow and he seemed to be in deep pain. "Alive," Taro whispered, but he wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. The guards hesitated. They had been trained to protect Viraya from any threat, and the oracle's prophecy had made them fearful. But Taro's instincts told him that this human was not a danger. He knelt beside the man and checked his pulse. It was weak but steady. "Help me carry him," Taro ordered. "We need to get him back to the city." With careful hands, they lifted the human and began to carry him through the jungle. The path was long, and the weight of their burden made each step feel heavier. Taro couldn't stop thinking about the prophecy. Could this be the human the oracle had seen? Would he really bring destruction, as Sela had warned? He didn't know, but he felt a strange uncertainty settle in his chest. As they reached the outskirts of the city, the people stared at the human with fear and curiosity. The news spread quickly. "A human has come to Viraya," they whispered, in hushed voices. Some looked on with distrust, others with wonder. Taro and the guards brought the human to the central hall of the city, where the oracle had always held council. Word had already reached Sela, and she was waiting for them. She stood with her hands folded, her silver hair flowing down her back. Her eyes were sharp, watching the human with a quiet intensity. "We've brought him," Taro said, his voice low. "He is alive, but barely." Sela stepped forward, her gaze shifting from Taro to the human lying on a simple bed. She studied him carefully, her mind racing. He looked different from her vision, though there were certain things about him that felt familiar. The way he lay there, vulnerable and still, reminded her of a frightened animal rather than the destroyer she had seen in her dream. She moved closer to him, her senses heightened. She felt his heartbeat, slow but steady. He was human, yes, but there was something more. There was a quiet strength inside him, something that felt different from the prophecy's warning. The human stirred, his eyes flickering open. He blinked at the unfamiliar surroundings, his mind struggling to focus. When he saw Sela, his eyes widened with surprise. His voice was weak, but clear as he spoke in a language none of the Virayans had ever heard before. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his words slurred with exhaustion. "I just need help. Please." Sela stepped back, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. This was not the angry, destructive human she had seen in her vision. Could it be that the prophecy was wrong? Or perhaps there was more to the story than she had understood. Taro and the others exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected fear, or worse, aggression. But instead they saw a man in pain, asking for help. Sela looked down at the human, her mind filled with questions. Was he really the one who would destroy their world? Or was there something else at play here? She wasn't sure yet, but one thing was clear. The future had already begun to change. The days that followed the human's arrival were filled with tension. The Virayans were deeply unsettled by his presence. They had heard of humans only in stories, and those stories spoke of danger, violence, and destruction. Yet here he was, a strange, frail man, lying in their city and asking for help. The human's name, as he slowly regained strength, turned out to be Tom. He spoke in a language unfamiliar to the Virayans, but after a few attempts, the city's translators managed to communicate with him. Tom explained that his ship had been caught in a deadly storm in space, and that he had crash-landed on Viraya with no idea where he was. He had no intentions of harming anyone. All he wanted was to survive and repair his ship. Despite his words, fear lingered in the hearts of the Virayans. Sela watched him closely, her silver eyes always observing, always thinking. She had not shared her prophecy with the council yet, but she knew they were all waiting for answers. The whispers of destruction filled the air, and the uncertainty of the future seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. Taro, the head of the guard, visited Tom every day to observe him. He was still cautious, unsure if the human was truly harmless. But Tom never showed any signs of aggression. Instead, he was always polite, offering to help with anything that needed fixing. The man had an energy that felt completely different from what Sela had imagined. There was no fire in his eyes, no anger. He seemed tired, lost, and more than anything, very alone. One morning, Sela visited Tom's chamber. He had been resting, recovering from his injuries. The room smelled faintly of herbs, and soft sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees outside. Sela stood silently at the entrance, watching him. He looked up when he sensed her presence, and there was a hint of relief in his eyes. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice hoarse from lack of use. Sela nodded and stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She sat down on a simple chair beside his bed. "I know you're confused," she began, her voice calm but firm. "This world, Viraya, is different from where you come from. The people here are afraid. They have heard of your kind, and many believe you are a threat." Tom's eyes flickered with surprise, then a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I can see why," he said quietly. "Humans don't have the best reputation in the universe." Sela raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Tom hesitated, clearly thinking about his words carefully. "Humans. We fight a lot. We take what we want. We've made mistakes, many mistakes, and some of them are hard to forgive. But I'm not here to hurt anyone." He paused. "I just need to find a way home." Sela studied him. She had expected an answer more like the ones in her vision, one filled with anger, with intent to harm. But Tom's response was the opposite. He spoke with regret, as if the thought of hurting someone weighed heavily on his heart. This was not the face of the destroyer she had seen in her prophecy. "I'm sorry for what you've been through," she said softly, her voice surprisingly gentle. "But your arrival here, it has caused fear. The council is concerned, as are the people." Tom nodded, looking down at his hands. "I understand," he whispered. "But if I could make up for the mistakes of my people, I would. I just need time. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, just for your help." Sella's heart softened as she listened. His words resonated with something deep inside her. She had seen many beings in her long life, but there was something about this human, something she couldn't quite place. Over the next few days, Sella spent more time with Tom, learning about his home, his people, and his world. He told her stories of the places he had seen, the adventures he had lived through. His eyes lit up when he spoke of his crew, and Sella could hear the sadness in his voice when he mentioned their loss. She learned that his ship had been part of a deep space exploration mission, a mission that had gone terribly wrong. As the days passed, Tom became more helpful. He worked on repairing the city's systems, fixing broken communication towers, and offering his knowledge to anyone who would listen. He didn't ask for much in return, only basic supplies and a place to rest. The people of Virea were still cautious, but slowly they began to warm to him. They saw that he meant no harm, that he truly wanted to make up for the damage his crash had caused. But even as Tom's kindness started to change the people's hearts, Sela couldn't shake the memory of her vision. Was it possible that the future she had seen had been misinterpreted? Or was there more to the story than she understood? One thing was clear. She could not ignore the prophecy. The future was still uncertain, and she had to prepare for whatever it might bring. Sela stood on the edge of the city, looking out over the vast forest. She could feel the weight of the prophecy heavy on her shoulders. The fire, the destruction, the human at the center of it all. It all seemed to lead to something. But what? Would Tom truly bring the end of their peaceful world, or was he, like so many others before him, simply misunderstood? As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between Tom and the Vireans grew stronger. The humans' reputation for violence and destruction was slowly replaced by a new understanding, at least among some of the Vireans. They watched as Tom worked tirelessly, repairing systems, helping the people and learning the ways of their planet. He didn't ask for much. In fact, all he wanted was to fix his ship and return home. But in the process, he had become something more. A friend, a helper, a symbol of hope in uncertain times. It was early one morning when Sela arrived at Tom's small workshop in the heart of the city. The sun was still low, casting a soft, golden light over the buildings. Tom was hunched over a strange piece of machinery, his hands moving with careful precision. His clothes were stained with dirt, and his face, though weary, held a determined expression. It was easy to forget that this was the human who had once been seen as a threat, the one whose arrival had caused so much fear. "Good morning," Sela greeted him, her silver hair shining softly in the sunlight. She didn't smile often, but there was a certain warmth in her voice when she spoke to him now. Tom looked up, surprised but not disturbed. "Good morning, Sela. What brings you here today?" "I've been thinking," she said, stepping closer to him. "I've seen how much you've helped the people of Virea. You've fixed systems, repaired the communication towers, and even taught some of the engineers how to improve their work. You've done more than I ever expected." Tom wiped his hands on a cloth and stood up. "I'm just doing what I can. I know it's not much, but it's all I've got right now. I can't fix what I don't understand, but I can try to make things a little easier for everyone." Sela's eyes studied him carefully. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. The people are beginning to trust you, Tom. They're starting to see that you're not a threat. But there are still some, especially in the council, who are not so sure. They want to keep you isolated, to keep you away from everything." Tom frowned, the hint of frustration in his expression. "I understand why they're scared. They don't know me. and they only know what they've heard. But I'm not their enemy. I only want to help. I know, Sela said, her tone softening. But they will never see it that way if they are never given a chance. You can't help people if they don't trust you, and I think you might be able to do more than just repair things. You could teach too. Tom blinked, surprised. Teach? But I don't know much about your culture or your ways. It's not about culture, Sela replied. It's about knowledge. You know things that could help us. You've seen how the world beyond Viraya works, how technology and systems work together. Many of our people know how to fix small things, but they don't know how to build or create on a larger scale. You can teach them how to think bigger, how to build. Tom considered her words carefully. I see what you mean. I've worked with machines and technology my whole life. Maybe I could teach them some basics, show them how to think in new ways. Sela smiled, though it was subtle. That's exactly what I had in mind. And so the next day, Tom began to teach. At first, only a few Virayan engineers showed interest. They had seen the human work, seen his skill, and were curious. Tom showed them how to build better energy sources, how to create more efficient systems, and even how to repair things they had thought were beyond fixing. The more he taught, the more the Virayans saw the value of his knowledge. Slowly but surely they began to trust him more. Ryla, a young engineer who had been one of the first to question Tom's intentions, became one of his most eager students. She followed him wherever he went, taking notes and asking endless questions. The others too began to ask for his help. Tom would spend hours working side by side with the engineers, sharing his knowledge of machines, energy, and space technology. But not everyone was as willing to accept him. There were still those who whispered in the shadows, who feared that Tom's presence meant something terrible was coming. Taro, the head of the guard, was one of the most cautious. He watched the human carefully, always on alert. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Tom's desire to help. It was just that he couldn't shake the memory of the prophecy. Meanwhile, Sela could sense the change in the air. She saw how the people of Viraya were beginning to accept Tom, how they were learning from him. She could see the future shifting, though the path was still unclear. Could it be that Tom was not the destroyer in her vision, but something else? Was he the key to saving them from a greater threat? Sela did not know the answer yet, but one thing was certain. Tom was no ordinary human. He had the potential to change everything for the Virayans, for better or worse. And she had to understand what that meant before it was too late. Tom had been on Viraya for several weeks now, and the changes were undeniable. The engineers, once skeptical of his abilities, had grown to trust him. They followed his lessons with enthusiasm, learning new ways to solve problems and improve their technologies. It was clear that his knowledge of machines and systems was something the Virayans had never seen before. They were becoming more capable, and their society was beginning to evolve in ways they hadn't thought possible. But despite all the progress, a shadow still hung over the city. Not everyone in Viraya was so eager to accept Tom. The council, particularly the elder members, remained wary. They saw the benefits of his teachings, but they couldn't ignore the prophecy. They couldn't forget the oracle's warning of destruction, a warning that had haunted their people for generations. Taro, the leader of the guards, was one of the most vocal in his concerns. He had watched Tom's progress, observed how the human had helped the engineers, and seen the trust growing among the people. But something about Tom didn't sit right with him. Every time he saw the human, he felt a knot in his stomach, an unease that he couldn't shake. Sela, on the other hand, was torn. She had watched the way Tom interacted with the people, how he worked tirelessly to help them. There was no anger in him, no desire for destruction. And yet, she couldn't ignore the vision she had seen, the one that showed fire and chaos, with a human at the center. Was Tom really the one the Oracle had spoken of, or was she simply misinterpreting the vision? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sela walked alone through the city. The streets were quiet, the air cool and crisp. She found herself standing at the edge of the forest, staring out over the vast land. It was a peaceful view, yet she couldn't escape the feeling that something was about to change. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "Sela." She turned to find Taro approaching. His face was serious, his eyes shadowed with concern. "I need to talk to you," he said. "About Tom?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Taro nodded. "Yes. I'm not sure what to make of him anymore. He's teaching our people, yes, but there's something off about it. It's too much, too quickly. We've always been a peaceful society, Sela. We've never had to rely on technology in the way he's pushing us to. It feels dangerous." Sela's heart tightened. She knew Taro's concerns were rooted in more than just fear of the unknown. He was a protector, and he saw any potential threat as something to be guarded against. But she couldn't dismiss what she had seen in Tom. His actions didn't match the prophecy. Not yet, anyway. "I understand your worry," Sela said quietly. "But Tom isn't what we thought. He's not here to destroy us. He's here because he has no other choice. His ship crashed. He's alone and he's just trying to survive. But what if it's more than that?" Taro's voice was firm. "What if he's pushing us too far? What if he's leading us down a path we can't come back from?" Sela looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "What if he's the one who can save us from something worse? What if we misinterpreted the prophecy and he's not the destroyer but the one who helps us rebuild?" Taro shook his head. "You're taking a big risk, Sela. The prophecy is clear. A human will destroy Viraya. We cannot ignore that. We can't just hope it's wrong." "I'm not hoping," Sela replied, her voice steady. "I'm just trying to see things differently. I can't ignore what I've seen with my own eyes. Tom isn't like the humans we've heard about. He's different, and we have to give him a chance." Taro didn't respond right away. He stared at her, as if trying to read her thoughts. "If you're wrong, Sela, if you're wrong, it may be too late for all of us." Sela's heart sank, but she stood her ground. "I don't believe I am, but I'll keep my eyes open. If Tom shows signs of being the threat the Oracle warned us about, we will act. But for now, we give him a chance." Taro sighed, clearly unconvinced, but he didn't argue further. He turned and walked away, leaving Sela to her thoughts. The days passed, and Sela couldn't shake the weight of Taro's words. What if she was wrong? What if Tom's arrival had been the beginning of the end for Viraya, just as the Oracle had predicted? But deep down, Sela couldn't bring herself to believe that. Tom was different. She felt it. But as she lay in her chamber that night, staring at the stars, doubt crept into her mind. Was she making a mistake? Could the prophecy still be right, even if Tom didn't seem like the destroyer? Or had she truly seen a new path, one that led to peace and understanding, not destruction? The answers weren't clear. But one thing was certain. The future was uncertain, and no one could know what would happen next. The days that followed were filled with uneasy calm. On the surface, life in the city of Viraya continued as usual. People went about their work, engineers learned new techniques from Tom, and the general mood was one of cautious optimism. Tom's knowledge was helping them advance in ways they had never imagined. Yet beneath the surface, the sense of unease that lingered never quite disappeared. Sela spent many nights staring out over the forest, her thoughts heavy with doubt. The words of Taro, the head of the guard, echoed in her mind. What if she was wrong? What if Tom was indeed the destroyer in her prophecy, and everything she had witnessed up until now was part of a larger plan? A plan she didn't fully understand, as She walked through the city one morning. She noticed that the people who had once been eager to learn from Tom were beginning to act differently. There was an air of suspicion in their eyes. They still trusted him to some degree, but something had shifted. A feeling of quiet unease had settled over the city, and Sela couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. That afternoon, Ryla, the young engineer who had become one of Tom's most devoted students, approached Sela with a troubled expression. "Sela," she said quietly, "I think you should know something. Some of the people in the council are concerned. They've heard rumors, whispers that Tom's teachings are changing things in ways they don't understand. There's talk of him encouraging us to use machines in ways we never have before. Some think it's dangerous." Sela listened carefully. "And what do you think, Ryla?" "I don't know," Ryla replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. "At first I thought it was just the usual fear of change, but now I'm not sure. People are beginning to ask questions. What if we're going too far? What if we're losing the balance we've always had?" Sela's heart sank. She had feared this moment, the moment when Tom's influence would be questioned. The city had always been a place of balance, where technology had been used sparingly, in harmony with nature. But Tom's teachings were pushing them into new territory, into realms they had never dared to explore before. "I will speak with the council," Sela said, her voice firm. "We need to address these concerns before they grow any larger." Later, that evening, Sela met with the council in their chambers, the room filled with the quiet hum of tension. The elders, wise and experienced, sat in a circle, their faces stern. At the center of the circle sat Larn, the eldest council member, his long silver beard flowing down to his chest. He looked at Sela with deep, weary eyes. "Sela," he began, his voice slow and thoughtful, "we have heard troubling things. Tom's teachings are causing unrest among the people. He is pushing them to use technology in ways that we have never allowed before. There are those who believe that these advances will bring us closer to destruction, not salvation." Sela took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I understand your concerns, but I have seen the way Tom has helped us. He has given us knowledge, things that we could not have achieved on our own. His intentions are not to harm us, but to help. We must trust him." Larn's eyes narrowed. "And what of the prophecy, Sela? The oracle spoke of a human who would bring fire and destruction to our world. Are we to ignore this? Are we to throw away the wisdom of our ancestors just because of the promises of a stranger?" Sela hesitated. The prophecy was never far from her mind. She had tried to push it aside, to convince herself that Tom was not the one who would destroy Virea, but now the doubts were creeping back in. "I don't believe that Tom is the one the oracle spoke of," she said softly, "but I cannot ignore the fact that the prophecy exists. I think we need to be cautious, but we also need to give him a chance. We cannot let fear guide our decisions." The room fell silent as the council members exchanged looks. Finally, Taro spoke up, his voice heavy with concern. "And if we're wrong, Sela? If we trust him and he turns out to be the one who will bring ruin to us all?" Sela met his gaze, her eyes steady. "If we do not trust him, we will never know what he is truly capable of. We must act with both caution and open hearts." The council remained silent for a moment, each member lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Larn nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "We will watch carefully. But understand this, Sela. We will not allow this world to be destroyed. If Tom becomes the threat we fear, we will act swiftly." Sela nodded, a heavy weight settling in her chest. She knew the council's decision was the right one, but it did nothing to ease the unease that continued to grow inside her. Could Tom really be the one who would bring destruction? Or was there something else, something deeper, something hidden, that she had yet to see? As she left the council chamber, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the prophecy bearing down on her. The future was uncertain, and the tension was mounting. No matter how hard she tried, she could not escape the feeling that Viraya was standing on the edge of something monumental, something that would change everything. The tension in Viraya had reached a breaking point. Every day, the people grew more divided. On one side, there were those who believed in Tom, the human who had come from the stars, who had shared his knowledge of technology and machines. They believed he was a friend, a mentor, someone who could help them reach new heights. On the other side, there were those who feared him, who saw him as a potential threat. They whispered in the streets, questioning the wisdom of trusting someone who might be the very one foretold to bring destruction to their world. Sela found herself torn between these two sides. She had seen the good Tom had done. She had watched him work side by side with the engineers, teaching them new ways to solve problems, new ways to build. But she couldn't deny the growing sense of unease. The whispers were getting louder, and the prophecy still loomed over them like a dark cloud. Could they really afford to ignore it? One evening, as Sela walked through the city, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. The streets, usually filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, were quieter than usual. People moved in groups, talking in hushed tones, their faces tense. The air itself seemed heavy, as if something was coming. Sela stopped near the central square and saw Ryla, the young engineer who had been one of Tom's most loyal students. Ryla was standing by the edge of the square, her eyes searching the crowd. When she saw Sela, she quickly walked over to her. "Sela, we need to talk," Ryla said urgently. "It's happening. The council, they're planning something. They're going to confront Tom tomorrow." Sela's heart skipped a beat. "Confront him? What do you mean?" Ryla glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. "They're going to ask him to leave. They say that his influence is too dangerous. They're going to send him away for the safety of the people." Sela felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. She had feared this moment, the moment when the council would take action based on their fears. But now that it was upon them, she didn't know how to respond. "Do they really think Tom is a threat?" Sela asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know," Ryla admitted. "But the whispers are growing louder. People are scared. The Oracle's prophecy hangs over everything. They're afraid that if they don't do something now, it will be too late." Sela stood in silence, her mind racing. She couldn't let Tom be sent away. He had done so much for Viraya, and she couldn't believe he was the destroyer the Oracle had warned about. But what if she was wrong? What if, despite all her instincts, the prophecy was true? "We have to stop them," Sela said finally, her voice firm. Ryla nodded, her face filled with determination. "What should we do?" "We need to speak to the council before it's too late," Sela replied. "I'll tell them what I know. We can't let fear guide their decisions. We have to give Tom a chance." That night, Sela couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, filled with doubt and uncertainty. The next day, everything would change. The council would decide Tom's fate. And if they chose wrong, it could be the end of everything they had worked for. Early the next morning, Sela made her way to the council chamber, her heart heavy. As she entered the room, she saw the familiar faces of the council members, their expressions serious. At the center of the circle sat Larn, the eldest council member, his face a mask of worry. "Sela," Larn greeted her, his voice deep and weary. "We are glad you're here. The time has come for us to make a decision. We cannot ignore the growing unrest among the people. The influence of the human, Tom, is becoming too great. We have heard the whispers. They say that if we do not act, we risk bringing about the very destruction the Oracle warned us about. Sela took a deep breath. I understand your concerns, Larn, but I don't believe Tom is the one the Oracle spoke of. He is not here to destroy us. He is here to help us. We cannot let fear cloud our judgment. Larn's eyes narrowed. And what if you're wrong, Sela? What if the prophecy is true, and we ignore it? If we allow Tom to stay, and he is the one who brings destruction, we will have no one to blame but ourselves. Sela felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had known this moment would come, but now that it was here, it was harder than she had imagined. I believe in Tom, she said, her voice steady. I've seen the good he has done. I've seen the way he's helped us. But more than that, I believe that fear cannot be the driving force behind our decisions. We have to trust that he is not the enemy. We have to trust that we are making the right choice. The council sat in silence, each member lost in thought. Sela's heart raced. This was it. This was the moment that would define everything. Finally, Larn spoke. Very well. We will give Tom one more chance. But if there is any sign of danger, we will act swiftly. Sela nodded, relief flooding through her. For now they had won. For now, Tom would remain. But in the back of her mind, the nagging question remained, was she making the right choice? Or was the storm that had been brewing on the horizon about to break? The days after the council's decision felt like a strange calm before a storm. For a moment, it seemed as though the worries and tensions in Virea had subsided. Tom continued to work with the engineers, teaching them new ways to improve their technology. People started to see the benefits of his knowledge. Their machines were growing more efficient, and their society was advancing faster than they could have imagined. But Sela knew the peace was fragile. The prophecy still hung over them, an invisible weight that none of them could ignore. The Oracle's words had never left her mind. What if they were wrong? What if they were about to make a mistake they could never undo? The council had given Tom a chance, but Sela couldn't shake the feeling that the decision wasn't final. She had seen firsthand how quickly fear could spread, how quickly doubt could turn into action. It only took one spark to ignite the flames of panic. One evening, as the city lay beneath a sky full of stars, Sela found herself wandering the streets alone. The cool air brushed against her skin, but it couldn't cool the fire of uncertainty in her chest. She needed answers, needed to be sure that they had made the right choice. As she passed through the central square, she spotted Tom, standing near the edge of the marketplace, staring out into the distance. His face was thoughtful, his eyes distant, as though he was lost in his own thoughts. Sela hesitated for a moment, but then walked toward him. Tom, she called softly. He turned to face her, his expression warming when he saw her. Sela, I didn't expect to see you out here so late. I couldn't sleep, Sela admitted, offering a small smile. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Tom raised an eyebrow, curiosity in his gaze. What's on your mind? Sela took a deep breath. You know the prophecy, right? The one the Oracle spoke of. Tom nodded slowly, his face darkening. I know. It's hard to forget. I've heard the whispers, Sela. I know what people think of me. Do you believe it? Sela asked, her voice quiet. Tom's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Sela saw a vulnerability in him. I've thought about it a lot, he said, quietly. I didn't come here to destroy anyone, Sela. I didn't ask for this. But I know what the Oracle said. I know what people believe. And I don't know if I can ever change that. Sela's heart ached for him. She had seen the good in him, the way he had helped their people, the way he cared about their future. But the doubts in her own heart were starting to grow, and she feared she was putting too much faith in someone who might be the very danger they were trying to avoid. "Do you want to prove them wrong?" Selah asked, her voice soft but determined. Tom's gaze never left hers. "I want to help. That's all I've ever wanted. But I don't know if I can change what's already been said. I don't know if I can convince them that I'm not the one who will bring ruin to this world." Selah took a step closer, her voice steady. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Tom. You just have to keep doing what you've been doing, helping us. The rest we'll figure out together." Tom looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I don't want to be the cause of any harm, Selah. If I ever become that, I want you to stop me." Selah's heart tightened at his words. She knew he meant them. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't a monster, as the prophecy had suggested. He was just a man, lost in a world that wasn't his own, trying to survive. "I promise," Selah said softly, her voice full of sincerity. For a moment the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, standing in the quiet of the night, sharing a bond that no one else could understand. But the peace didn't last long. In the distance, a group of guards appeared, moving swiftly through the streets. Their expressions were tense, their eyes scanning for something or someone. Tom stiffened, his eyes narrowing as the guards approached. Selah felt her pulse quicken. She had seen the look in their eyes before. It was the look of those who had made up their minds. The leader of the group, Taro, stepped forward. His face was grim, his voice cold. "Tom," he said, "we need to speak with you. There are matters that can no longer be ignored." Selah's heart skipped a beat. She could see it in Taro's eyes. The council had made a decision, and it wasn't in Tom's favor. "Not now, Taro," she said quickly, stepping in front of Tom. "We've already discussed this. The council gave him a chance." Taro's gaze hardened. "That was before. Now, we have more information. We cannot let this go on any longer." Selah's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Would Tom be sent away, despite everything they had worked for? Would their trust in him be broken forever? She looked at Tom, his face pale but determined. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change. The tension in the air was thick, the quiet of the night broken only by the steady steps of the guards as they moved towards Selah and Tom. She stood her ground, heart pounding, refusing to let fear dictate her actions. The moment had come, the moment that would determine the future of Viraya, and possibly of her and Tom's relationship. Taro stood tall before them, his expression hard, as if he had already made up his mind. His voice was firm, cold. "Selah, step aside. This is not a discussion. The council has made its decision. Tom is to leave Viraya immediately." Selah's heart dropped. The words felt like a blow, the final nail in a coffin she wasn't ready to close. She had fought so hard to keep Tom here, to trust that he was not the one the prophecy spoke of. And now, despite all of her hopes and promises, it seemed that her worst fears were coming true. "Why?" Selah asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "Why are you doing this? The council gave him a chance. Why is this happening now?" Taro's eyes were cold, his face set in stone. "The people have spoken, Selah. There are whispers of rebellion, of fear. The longer we let Tom stay, the more danger we face. We cannot ignore the signs. The oracles. Prophecy has warned us too long for us to dismiss it." "But you don't know what you're talking about." Selah's voice was rising now, but she didn't care. "You don't understand him. He has helped us more than anyone else could. He is not the enemy." "You are blinded by trust," Taro snapped. "You refuse to see what's right in front of you." Selah stepped forward, her heart racing. She couldn't back down now. I trust him because I've seen what he can do. I've seen the good he's brought to our people. You don't see the change he's helping us create." Taro shook his head, his voice becoming more urgent. "The change he brings is dangerous, Sela. You're too close to this. You can't see the threat he poses." Tom stood silently beside Sela, his face tense, his hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, he didn't speak, just watched the exchange with a heavy heart. But then quietly he stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "Taro," he said, "I didn't come here to harm anyone. I came here to help, to share what I know. If that's a mistake, then I'm sorry. But I can't leave. I won't." Sela turned to him, her heart swelling with pride. Tom's words were simple, but they held a truth that she had always known. He wasn't here to destroy. He was here to build, to help, to learn. The people of Viraya had become his family, his friends, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to keep them safe. Taro looked at him with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You're asking us to ignore the prophecy. You're asking us to turn our backs on the warning that has guided our people for centuries." Sela could feel the weight of his words, but she didn't let it sway her. She had made her choice, and she wasn't about to let fear dictate their fate. "I'm asking you to trust in something more than just a prophecy. I'm asking you to trust in the people we are becoming. We can make our own future, Taro. We don't have to live in the shadow of fear." The silence that followed was deafening. The guards stood still, their eyes flicking between Sela, Tom, and Taro, unsure of what to do. The air crackled with the weight of the decision that lay before them. Finally, Lan, the eldest council member, stepped forward. His face was tired, his eyes filled with a wisdom born of years of leadership. He looked at Sela, then at Tom, and finally at Taro. "We have heard both sides," Lan said quietly. "And though we are torn, I believe Sela is right. We cannot allow fear to guide our decisions. If Tom is truly the one the oracle spoke of, then we will face that when the time comes. But if he is not, then we must trust in him now." Taro's face flushed with anger, but Lan raised a hand, silencing him. "The council has spoken," Lan continued. "Tom will stay, and we will watch carefully. But know this, if any harm comes to our people, we will act swiftly." Sela breathed a sigh of relief, the tension in her chest easing. Tom, beside her, gave her a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," he said softly, as the guards withdrew, and the night began to return to its quiet peace. Sela turned to Tom, her heart full of emotion. "We have a chance," she said, "but it's up to us to prove them wrong." Tom nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "We will. We'll show them what we can build together." And with that, Sela knew the journey ahead would be difficult, full of challenges and uncertainty. But for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. Together, with Tom, they would face whatever came their way. And no prophecy, no matter how ancient, could take that away.